Hello and welcome. Prime Minister Modi's government is 2 years old. 2 years ago, Finance Minister Mr. Arun Jaitley has said that the economy needs serious repairs. So the repair job, how far is it done, or there is miles to go?
Well, I think a lot of structural reforms have taken place. What we've witnessed during the period 2014 to 2016 is very significant. And this significance will be gauged from the fact that in 2014, we took over on a day when India was off the global radar. Investors were shunning us. The country was considered to be indecisive. And the journey last 2 years has been from policy paralysis to the fastest growing economy in the world. 2 years ago, they would say, well, the eye in BRICS is being knocked off. Today, you are the most successful amongst the BRICS economies. I think this change has come on account of several factors. And the fact that a lot of structural reforms which are directional have taken place. Some parts of the global scenario have hurt us very badly. The global slowdown, the shrinkage of exports, the volatility, impact on markets, impact on currencies, that's hurt us. We can't be immune from what's happening in the world. The oil price regime has helped us. And therefore, the net total is, at the end of 2 years, I think directionally we are moving in the right direction. And if today any of these global variables, as I call it, and domestic variables, change for the better as far as India is concerned, then this 7.5% growth in a slowdown environment has an ability to pick up even more.
You see, you have had a very interesting situation that you have had 100 bills passed till now. The last session was actually amazingly productive, that despite all the opposition, you actually had the opposition cooperating and passing several legislations. Now, that the initial problem for you was the opposition stalling bills and legislations. What is stopping you now from unleashing that proverbial beast in the economy?
I'll tell you. You see, let's first look at the negatives and I'll come to the positives. The first negative is the global situation. The world is in a serious economic situation. Economies across the world are in the range of -2 to +2%. And therefore, global trade has shrunk. That impacts on exports. That impacts on domestic manufacture. Global demand is down. That impacts on domestic private sector. So that's the first negative. The second negative is 2 continuous years of a bad monsoon. And the third negative is the banking legacy that the UPA left behind in a seriously challenging situation, which had impact on private sector being stressed and therefore private investment lacking. I think these are the 3 main challenges and negatives before us. The positive side, I see a moderate oil price, which helps us. I see a lot of increased public investment. I see a lot of increased FDI because of confidence in the Indian economy. We are a better destination than anywhere else in the world. I see the reforms moving quite well directionally. I'm quite optimistic on that. And finally, I also see that this year, with urban demand having moved up, if we have a good monsoon, and the likelihood seems to be yes, then rural demand will pick up, which in turn will have an impact on private sector demand. And therefore, this 7.5% has a potential to grow, notwithstanding those 3 big negatives.
And that may bring in more revenue into the system.
That brings in more revenue, and therefore your ability to spend in rural India, your ability to spend on infrastructure increases. As it is, in the last 2 years, we've undertaken a lot of expenditure. Now, on those 3 negatives, the global situation is something I can't control. But I think the monsoon, I hopefully will be rectified this year. And the third factor, which is a weak private sector, resulting from a weak banking system. I think the series of steps which we are taking, the NPA situation is gradually going to climax, and then the decline will begin. And I think with a better monsoon also, private sector demands will pick up. As it is, there are green shoots available. So notwithstanding a global slowdown, India can be and will be an isolated area where high growth levels are possible.
You have said a lot many things in this, but economy is a lot about perception in an extremely closed network. What is a global situation? Will you like to see what? And you have made Indian media squirm over the last 2 years by saying that Indian media should create better credible situations and reportage as far as the economy is concerned. The Bloomberg says that rupee is right now not performing well. Brazil is slightly doing better, and the Indian economy is good still, but it's getting slightly boring.
Well, I think if we dipped to a minus 2% scenario like Brazil, the Bloomberg TRPs will go up.
You might say the improvement.
The Bloomberg TRPs will go up, but that's not what I'm looking forward to. Let's look at what's happening to Brazil. Brazil is in a serious crisis. I'm not only referring to the political crisis, but also the economic crisis, because that's a resource-based economy. It's based on resources, and therefore their currency is done extremely badly. And I hope Brazil comes up. They've been a very close ally of India. But let's not forget, under this distress situation, the Indian rupee has been one of the better performing global economies. The rupee, the dollar had hardened, and therefore every economy, every currency compared to the dollar was collapsing. Till August 2015, the rupee stood its ground. But once China shake-up took place, the rupee also came down. We came down qua the dollar, but we improved qua every other currency in the world. So if you take the net impact on the rupee has, even in such a volatile situation, one of the better performing global currencies.
One of the elements which almost everybody is talking about is that the pace of reforms. You had political compulsions, you have a parliament when it comes to legislations. The GST remains one talking point as far as global economies is concerned. Well, the numbers of the opposition may dwindle, yours may not significantly improve. But this time around, are you going to shed that inhibition that without the Congress, I'm not going to go for the bill?
The answer is yes. And first of all, let me tell you the pace of reforms. The pace of reforms in the last 2 years has been the fastest ever in the last 25 years. In fact, I have always described Mr. Modi's first 2 years as the slogovers, and the next 3 maybe even faster. And therefore, we haven't waited for the 4th and the 5th year to come out with some gimmicks. We started with the slogovers on day 1. Now, as far as the GST is concerned, the real Congress was the author of this bill. Congress should have claimed authorship and claimed credit. They took out some points which, with my respectful submission, are not exactly very substantial. And Congress started finding holes in this bill. I answered them in the last session of Parliament. It's for them now to reconsider. I would prefer to pass it with consensus, because every state government is supporting it, and the Congress governments are also supporting it. And therefore, we need their support. But then enough is enough. The country can't wait because the Congress can't make up its mind. And therefore, if they don't support and come around a consensus, let it be put to vote and let the country decide whether they want a GST or not. And I am sure with the, you see, the BSP and the SP both support the GST. The Trinamool supports the GST. The JDU supports it. The RJD supports it. The NCP supports it. The Biju Janata Dal supports it. The TRS supports it. The CPM supports it. Now, only if you have one party which says, well, I don't support it, then the logical thing is let it be put to vote.
But you have to put it, present it for vote. Will you be doing it in this monsoon session?
Well, I hope to do so. I will try for consensus, but if it doesn't work, then let it be put to vote.
The crisis in the economy. Banks is perhaps one of the most worrisome fact. Who went off to sleep and who was looking the other way?
I don't think that's a fair question on the banks. Two things have happened. During the UPA period, the banks were lending, and let me first of all take it as bona fide. Banks must lend because banks have to support growth, and growth comes from lending. The bank credits increase, the growth has to come. There may be some reckless lending, but then most of the lending is not reckless. It is to legitimate industry. Now, what had happened was there were 5 or 6 sectors of the economy which were doing very badly for some reason or the other. And the UPA went off to sleep and decided not to rectify those sectors. Steel, the largest NPAs, a legitimate sector, suffering because Chinese steel was coming in at cheaper prices and we were not able to stop it. The moment I have put the minimum import price, the domestic industry is today protected, the balance sheets are started turning. Very shortly, the steel industries will start servicing the interests. So this will, the twin balance sheet problem, steel impacting on the banks, will be over. Now, power sector. The state discoms are merely distributing power below cost, and who's footing the bill? The banks. So somebody has to pay the banks. Now we've put a stop to this, and I've asked the states to take over the debt of the discoms and issue bonds to the banks, something which has happened, and therefore the debt will come down. Highways, paralyzed sector, Mr. Gadkari has revived it, therefore it's working. Sugar, international prices come down and therefore sugar industry goes sick, bank NPAs. Today the prices have moved up, it's rectified. Last 2 sectors which are there, textile and infrastructure. Steps are being taken and slowly those sectors are being rectified. Additionally, bankruptcy, Sarfazi, DRT, all these changes that we are making are empowering the banks to take action against persistent defaulters. And I think people have now started selling out, and you will see over the next few quarters, the impact of the selling out will be that the NPAs, having broadly climaxed, may go up a little bit and then start climbing down.
The banks have submitted the EQR. If you look at today, PNB 55,000 crore. It is spreading to private banks with ICICI Bank and Axis reporting 70,000.
That's only half the picture. The PNB even last year has had an operational profit of 12,000 crores. So it's not a bank making losses. Because of these sectors, steel and so on, these are exactly the sectors, the NPA mounts up to 55,000 crores. Once the recoveries from these sectors will come, this 55,000 crores starts coming down, and with this commercial operating profit like 12,000 crore that PNB has, I think it's a sound bank. It will certainly recover. The government will strongly and solidly support these banks.
Consolidation, recapitalization.
Well, recapitalization we started last year. It will happen this year. Consolidation, the first big step we have taken. The 5 subsidiaries of SBI and Bharatiya Mahila to merge with the associated banks will.
When is that expected? Because that's big.
The banks have in principle taken a decision. They have sort of government approval. We'll very shortly be commenting on that.
But the banks have also suffered because of the rate cut issues. It was a 1-year long wait for banks eventually when they could talk about rate cut.
I'll tell you, the RBI has an onerous responsibility of balancing inflation and balancing it with growth so that liquidity remains, so that people have money to spend. Now, when inflation goes up to 10 and 11 and 12%, obviously some squeeze will take place because you need to then curtail the money supply. Now, slowly in the last 14-15 months, the RBI has cut down the basis rate, basis rate by the repo rate by almost 150 basis points. Now, having cut it down by 150 points, the transmission has to take place because the banks were not very strong. The transmission out of this is only of about 65 points. Slowly more and more will take place.
But sir, how can banks transfer a lot? Because the problem with the banks is that their rates at which banks borrow, that's very expensive because there has been a squeezing at that level.
As far as operational profits are concerned, the banks continue to make that. It is the hidden NPAs are now being put into the books and they are being told to disclose it. That's why the figure becomes large, as in the case of the PNB.
6 June, you are meeting the bank chiefs. What are you going to tell them?
Well, I think I'm going to support all of them. That's my first message. And I'm going to persuade them that on commercial and banking considerations, Start the recovery process wherever you can. Whichever managements can't deliver, the managements must change. They must
Will it be
align.
as ruthless as a farmer faces for a 5,000 or 5 lakh rupee loan?
You see, we are not going to paralyze businesses. While you don't create a crisis in the market, you don't paralyze businesses. At the same time, the debtors must pay. They can't get away without paying. And therefore, that's going to be the loud message and policy as far as banking is concerned.